welcome to the Leadership Zoomcast with Neil and Albert, our first attempt at video cast, whatever you want to call this, using the technology that's there today. And we just thought we'd try and pull this together to help leaders, managers, anyone in a position where they might have to lead people, just by sharing a few thoughts and having a conversation. That's really my thoughts. Albert, great to see you today.
Yeah, good to be here actually. Good chance. Friday morning, something to do before we kick into the weekend. So yeah, that's really good if we can just share some thoughts with people. That'd be great.
Exactly, yeah. So we thought we'd talk about today leadership versus management, which is a topic that is covered so much in so much detail in so many books. But we thought we'd share with you kind of some of our thoughts around leadership versus management. So, Bertie, what are your thoughts on leadership versus management?
I go right back to when I did my first leadership course. I was already a manager, and the first leadership course I did was a phrase that they put that I think doesn't change now, right? And the phrase was, managers teach you how to do it right, and leaders do the right things. And I think that's probably still true. I guess there's an addition that I've heard since, which is much more around management is about things, so control, quality, time, cost, those things. And leadership is about people, inspiring, motivating, coaching. So I think that'd be my initial thoughts, Neil. If I just look at it, it's about things, it's about people.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there's the distinction I heard when in corporate world was leadership was looking forward in the strategy, and management was about the tactical delivering on the day-to-day activity. There's in Seven Habits. Have you read Seven Habits of People?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And there's a story in there which I think is a great story about leadership. I probably won't get it all right, but it's a story I tell quite often. But he talks about this group of people in a jungle that are hacking their way through a jungle, making a path through the jungle.
Yeah.
And so you've got the machete wielders at the front of the line hacking their way through the jungle. And behind them, you've got the managers who are organising machete wielders. They're organising the training so that the machete wielders are wielding the machete in the most efficient way, using Six machete wielding. They're recruiting machete wielders, and so that when they have to hire more people, they're recruiting machete wielders. They're making sure the machetes are sharp and that they've got the job. So the managers are managing the process of hacking through the jungle.
Yeah.
And then on the tallest tree behind the managers, at the very top of a ladder at the tallest tree, is a guy who's looking out across the jungle, and that's the leader. And he's deciding which direction they should go in through the jungle. That description of the operational side of things versus the leadership side of things, I think is the difference in my mind.
That's a fair point. It's also a good question as to whether a manager has to be a leader. Because you could have a manager that just stays a manager. He's an operational guy, or she's an operational girl. That could be the way it works.
And is there anything wrong with that?
I don't think so. And I think, well, look, we can come onto the topic of why do people become a manager?
Yeah.
Because even that in itself, right? I mean, I remember the day I became a manager. I wasn't a manager on Friday, and I was on Monday. I don't know what happened on the weekend, because nothing special happened on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
But I think when you and I went through our manager careers, we appreciated, as a manager, you're no longer just responsible for yourself anymore. You're now responsible for others as well, and for outcomes.
Which is an interesting point, actually, isn't it? Because it's quite scary when you first become a manager, especially when you're young. I mean, you and I were both in the 40s.
Yeah.
And I never thought of myself as a leader when I first became a manager. I was just a manager. My job was to make sure that team performed the best they could in the following the procedures and the processes and the stuff that I was being measured on.
Yeah.
So I guess I became a manager to become a manager. I didn't become a manager to become a leader.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. Yeah.
So the question then is, so can managers be leaders? or can leaders be managers? Is there a combined role there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Do you have to be a manager to be a leader? Right? We know good people who are in positions of authority over a topic and could be a leader in their topic. Right? So I could be a technical leader and have no people report to me.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. So that's a different type of leadership then, isn't it? Because that
Exactly.
is about the leadership based on your knowledge and your skill set. Leader in your field, like in the medical field, you're leader in the medical field.
Yeah.
Versus leading an organization.
Yeah. I think the one that we enjoy more is about leading an organization, right? Because you and I have done that, absolutely enjoyed it. I think, without sounding arrogant, I think we were pretty good at it, right? But that then comes on to why you and me? Why were we, in our view, good leaders? Is it just because we were born good leaders?
The age-old question: is it something you're born with, or? And I guess that's an interesting topic when it comes to leadership. You know, I was asked 5 years ago about being a leader, and I was talking about there's managers, there's leaders, and then there's inspirational leaders, and there's a big gap between leaders and inspirational leaders. And I was asked a question, you know, can you become an inspirational leader, or are you, or is it something that you learn? And actually my view was, no, it's in your DNA, you can't learn it. But then I also thought at some point everybody's probably inspirational and leads. It might be your family, it might be your church, it might be a sports team, become an inspirational leader. So
well, it's interesting, right? Because my view of leadership and becoming a better leader was looking at who were the good leaders, whether it was outside of our industry, whether it was down the corridor in the same building I was in, and appreciate what they did and look at whether I could mimic any of those things. Not to clone myself on them, but to say there's certain behaviors that they've got, there's certain attitudes they've got, there's certain demeanor they've got, there's certain characteristics that I go, if I adopted any of those, would they make me a better leader? And I could say, yeah, I could say, I had a set of 3 role models. Whenever I talk to audiences, they used to say to me, you know, how do you decide your improvement plan, etc. And I say, I've got these 3 leaders that I used to think about, right? And you and I know all of them, right? But I'd look at different behaviors that they had and say, would that suit me to have that behavior? Now, some of those behaviors wouldn't suit me, right? But some of those behaviors, I'd go, yeah, I could adopt that. And did it make me better as I went? So one thing was about consistency. I remember one of the leaders said to me, just be consistent. You might be wrong, but be consistent. So people know who you are, where you're coming from, and your point of view. If you're doing this, they can't.
You've just frozen on me. Let's see if it comes back.
No, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we both froze then. This is classic Zoomcast. So you were saying what about consistency?
Yeah, so just about being consistent, right? And is that valuable to the people that you are leading? Yeah, because they can't wake up one morning going, what's Albert going to be like today, right? I think there's also an element of we've got a certain persona that as a leader you have to maintain. So are we on a stage when we go to work every day? I think to an extent you might be. I'm not saying be false. I'm saying, but don't take your problems to work, is my view.
Yeah, I guess there's what you're talking about is the standards and that you want to set as a leader. I guess I've got a question because, you know, we started talking about leadership versus management. I guess thought in my mind that popped in as you were talking about role models that you had is what made you label them leaders versus, you know, basically they were in senior management roles. So what changed to make them a leader, not a manager?
in my head, and that's only because I think about it now, because I never thought about it then. In my head, when I think about it now, it's because I saw the way other people responded to them. It's because I saw the way my peers just considered them a leader and just followed them. Even though there were times we would go, this is crazy, right? Why have we got to do this? Well, because they said we should, right? And we had confidence that they were doing the right thing for the business, for the team, for the people, and people just followed them. Maybe that was what that was subconscious, right? It wasn't something I consciously did.
So do you think that, what's going on in thinking in my head at the moment is, if you think about big organizations, people become a manager and they're managing the processes.
Yeah.
You know, first line manager, they then become a second line manager and they're just managing more processes.
Yeah.
They become a third line or executive or whatever it's called in whatever company they're in. When do they step into that leader? When do they become a leader?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I considered myself to have become a leader when I got into an executive role and was leading senior people.
So it's a title and position.
I don't know if it is a title and position. It was the title and position that made me recognize I was a leader. I was probably a leader before that, right? I mean, when I was a senior manager, I must have been a leader when I was a senior manager. But in my head, I felt that switch flicked when I became the business owner and the leader of a senior team. Because I then felt my job was less about the processes and more about motivating, inspiring, rewarding, and working with my leadership team. When I think about it, that's the difference that happened for me. I then felt I was running a team who was running the business.
Yeah, okay. So so when you get to a certain size, you can't manage so much of the process because you've got a business. I guess there's a thought to, I do a lot of work with small businesses as well, and typically they're set up by an individual, and so you've got a leader because they are an entrepreneur who's a leader, and typically they're poor managers. Not all of them, but they're not trained to manage process. In fact, they don't like managing process.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a company managing director the other day, who he was brought in to be a managing director, general manager, a general manager, and he saw his role as being a manager. It's quite reasonable sized business, probably 10 million turnover, something like that. So reasonable sized business. He didn't see himself as a leader. He said, I'm not the leader, I'm the general manager. Actually, just talking about it was strategy, direction, managing people. So he was actually, although he was focused on process, so does that mean you're a leader, but you see yourself as a manager?
Yeah.
So I guess, does it matter? Is it more about the outcome or the output from that you get from this?
Yeah.
So go on.
So who's the judge of whether you're a good leader? Who or what is the judge of whether you're a good leader?
Or a good manager? Because we're not saying being a manager is a bad thing.
Yeah.
No, being a good manager is a good thing. And this is one of the things I've noticed. There are very few good managers.
Yeah.
That really understand the basics of being a good manager and helping their employees succeed at what they do and helping deliver the results. There's lots of people who've been put in management roles and not given anywhere near the kind of training you used to get in corporates.
Yeah.
So I guess we're not saying management is a bad thing, but then when do you decide, or who decides leader? Who makes those decisions?
Well, it's interesting actually, because there's a couple of things around the management thing, isn't it? Why do people become managers, right? And we've seen, you and I have experienced people becoming managers because that's the way they got their next promotion. That's the way they got their pay rise, right? Completely the wrong reason to do it. And I think there needs to be a recognition that once you become a manager, you become responsible for other people. You're not accountable for everything they do, but you have a responsibility to them like you have a responsibility to your family. And if you don't take it that seriously, I think you've missed the point. That's my personal view, right? In becoming a manager, you're taking that responsibility for that group of people.
That group of people and that delivery of whatever the company you're working for is paying you to deliver.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, if I look at even large businesses or small businesses now, people become managers because they think it's the next step on their career.
Yeah.
Not because they want to manage people.
Yeah.
And manage a portion of the business. In fact, I think when people get into it, they quite often don't realise, that they now own this and they're now responsible for it. And in smaller businesses, I definitely see it where someone's put in that position because they were the best technical person, or they've said, right, you're the best at this now. So can the best so do they make good managers?
Yeah.
Typically not.
Well, I think that's another point then, right? Because so we do that, and people get put into management roles. But do we acknowledge that management is a profession? And do we train them for that profession? And do we skill them for that profession? So you put someone on the football field, you wouldn't train them? Of course you train them, right? And you train them for the position they're going to play in. And you train them for how they work with the rest of their team. But when you put managers into a role, sometimes I think people think we're there, draw the line. That person's now in the job, they go, and all we think about is their team.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point. Is management a profession? And therefore, is leadership a profession? And if you think about most companies, certainly there is a sales function, there's a delivery function, there's a finance function. And there are professions within those, accountancy professions or engineering qualifications or special certification you need for whatever you're delivering. And there is sales training and sales qualifications.
I lost you there. I completely lost your sound.
Which bit did you lose?
I don't know because I didn't hear it.
I was so what I was saying was, there are lots of different professions.
Yeah.
So do businesses see management as a profession? Do any businesses see management as a profession?
Yeah. I personally don't think, I don't want to sound that we know it all and they don't, but I personally don't think they do. I think there appears to be a belief that when someone gets into that role, they are now responsible for themselves to manage their own development and progression. And I think that's wrong. Now, like you and I know, in the large corporates, that isn't the case, right? Because there's a whole suite of development education and development coaching and skills and so on, right?
Well, there used to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in cost cutting, we've cut back on that, right?
Yeah.
And then if a team fails, what's the failure of the team? Is it the leadership that failed the team to get there? Is it because the team wasn't right?
Is it the leadership? Is it the management below the leadership? Or is it the team? Or if they succeed, is it the team, the management, or the leadership?
Well, if the team failed, is that the responsibility of the team or the leader?
Yeah, good question. I think I did hear something on that, a quote on that once. And certainly personally, from my point of view, if someone doesn't understand what good looks like, if someone doesn't understand then that's my failure as a leader.
Right.
And you certainly see that, the old style of you beat people up for not delivering, that's still going on, especially depending on who's at the very top and what cascades down. But certainly good leaders and good managers take ownership for how their team perform. And if their team aren't performing, they look at themselves first, or if they don't, they probably should.
Yeah, I think it's something you said earlier, right? So this comes down to leaders setting direction, setting strategy, and laying out for people where we're going and what we're trying to achieve. If they don't get that, and if you don't set that scene as a leader, who is? Who's going to set that scene? Nobody, right?
Yeah.
So that's your job. It comes back to one of these other things that we've heard over the years, right? Only do what you can do, right? So that's your job as a leader, to lay that stall out for everyone. But it then becomes their responsibility to go and deliver that. It's also their responsibility, if they can't, to put their hand up, because then it becomes our responsibility to help them.
Yeah, but you need to create the environment where it's safe to put your hand up.
Yeah.
Where it's okay to do that. And I think that's a management and a leadership thing as well.
Yeah. I had a previous boss who asked, who said your team can only be as good as the slowest rower in the boat, right? So then we got into this conversation about what should you do about the slowest rower? And I said, well, we should train them and get them fitter and get them focused. And I said, that's what I think we should do with that slowest rower. Well, what do you think? And he said, throw them out the boat. Yes, and he goes, yeah, because they're just a weight and they're not adding the value. And I went, well, it depends. Maybe it depends on the situation we're in, where we haven't got time for that. So maybe you're right. If today is a crisis and I've got a crisis to deal with, I haven't got time to do what I need to do. But what's the right long-term thing to do? And what's the right thing for the team and for that people? So that's an interesting thought, actually. Is our job to develop people as leaders, or is our job to select the best and get rid of the ones that are not the best?
There's a balance with both, I think. So you clearly, when I'm coaching people, there's a conversation I have about, there's a bar, there's a performance standards bar goes up, and you might be able to help lift people up with you and keep up with you, but there will be some people who either don't want to or who can't reach that bar. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It does mean that it's best for them and for the business for them to go and do something that suits them better, where they're going to be above the bar. But I think that's, and we'll talk about this in other Zoomcasts. That's about having a mature adult conversation. And I think one of the things I think we should cover on one of these is about straight talk and having those difficult conversations, because they don't have to be difficult. If you do the right management stuff up front, they don't have to be difficult. There was something, actually, the rowing's an really interesting example, because I ran like a team building workshop on a big skiff, which is so you have 8 people sitting with 1 oar each next to each other. It's a big boat, not like a normal thin rowing boat. You have a guy who's steering it at the stern. So imagine you've got the guy at the stern, the person who's on the left, the first rower, the number 1 rower, is the leader. Okay, and then you've got everyone lined up around. And what was fascinating about this, so I was put in the leadership seat and I'm rowing. And of course, my initial reaction is, right, let's row as fast as we can. And what happens is, if someone can't keep up, you then end up with all bashing into each other, and the whole boat stops still, right? So you have to. So the first thing I learned was you can't lead at a pace that's faster than your team can keep up with. The second thing I learned was, so where you position people in the boat was really important. So how you allocate your resources was really. So there was, you can't go at the pace. You can't set the pace. What was the other thing I learned from that? So you got this. It's gone from my head now. There were 3 things I learned from that exercise. I wrote a blog on it, and it was just of how, if your leader is setting a pace that's too quick, if you've got your people in the wrong place, I can't remember what the things were, but it was a really, really good example. But something you just, what's interesting about this conversation, I didn't expect to get this thought process. There's 2 things come to mind in this thought process. One, manager versus leader, is being a professional manager is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with being a good professional manager, managing the operations. And actually, I think that's quite often forgotten. because everyone expects people to be leaders or inspirational leaders.
Yeah.
And actually, I think in a lot of organizations, even some of the senior executives, board members are just managers.
Yeah.
You know, they're not leaders. So that's a really interesting point, actually, is developing managers and becoming a professional manager, being the best manager you can be is an interesting point.
I'm not sure those board members would appreciate that if they're listening to this, but it's fact, right? And you've got to take that on board, right?
Well, the ones that are leaders will be okay with it. The ones that are managers won't.
Listen, we had many years in the corporations we worked in, right? And we worked for some really good bosses, and we worked for some not so good bosses. Because the other part is about this is, I think the team's got a responsibility to help the leader become a better leader. The team could help them with that, right? One of the things I always remember about power when you become a leader, you become a much better leader by giving the power to your team. Don't hold the power for yourself, right? When we achieve something, we achieve it because we achieved it together. Power to you guys to try and find better ways for us to move forward and so on. But if we get it wrong, I don't mind taking it on the chin. That's my problem, because I may have done something wrong. And I think that's another thing, is you've got to be humble, and you can't have a huge ego. Personal view. If you want to be a good leader, you can't have a huge ego.
But yeah, I think if you have an ego, then the blame game comes in, because you feel hurt every time something goes wrong. You feel you have to hold the power. You have to be more powerful and more knowledgeable than your team.
Don't need it, right? You don't need it. And by the way, not having an ego doesn't mean you haven't got ambition. You've got ambition and you've got drive and you've got pride. But that's a big different thing. There's probably a topic for another day, right? In terms of,
there is.
To be honest, Neil, we've covered a lot of ground here that I didn't think.
No.
And we could spur off to lots of other things as well.
I agree with that. I think there's, it's the first time we've done one of these, and I hadn't thought about. I've always thought that leadership is better than management. Actually, it's not.
Yeah.
Being a good manager, a really good, effective manager, is just as good and needed as being a good leader.
Yeah.
The other thing you said, which I hadn't thought about before, when I think about it, I always think of leadership as the guy setting the strategy, the guy at the front, the guy, the business leader, the inspirational guy who's motivating everyone around him. But actually, there's another type of leadership as well, which I hadn't really considered, which is this kind of technical leader, the leader who the medical leaders that we see at the moment. They're in a leadership role, but in a completely different way than your classic business leadership. So I hadn't thought of that.
But when we were at Big Blue, that would have been our distinguished engineers, right? So our distinguished engineers were our absolute top technical leaders.
Yeah.
You needed to know something in that field, and they were good coaches. They were inspiration for people wanting to come through that career path. All the same things. They just didn't hold their cards. They didn't pay their salary. They didn't do all of their management.
Correct. And so there are different. So I guess it kind of summarize. I think we'll sort of round up and pull this together. So the topic was leadership versus management. Our first Zoomcast. That we give it a go, and we'll put an audio out on this as well. And hopefully it's been useful, whether you're a manager or a leader in this context. And I guess if you're a manager and a professional manager, that's great. And if you're a leader and you're in a leadership role, whatever that is, there's potentially some development stuff. And I think as we go through these conversations, we'll probably pick up specifically on some of those topics.
Yeah. No, I agree. Come back to one of the things we talked about earlier, right? So are these leaders born, or are these leaders created? Personally, as we leave this Zoomcast, I'd say yes, because it's both, right? Some people are natural leaders and they can just do it and they don't need the formula.
Yeah.
But some people need the formula and they can become great leaders if they can just take those things on board. But it has to be within you, right? Because if some of those lessons don't fit well with your makeup, don't force it. Don't force it. Do something else.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of talked about, I think you can be both. And actually, you probably need to be a little bit of both as well. You need to have a level of management in you to be a leader, and you need to have leadership in you to be a good manager.
Yeah.
There's an element of both, and it's probably what where that line crosses.
Yeah.
When you become more of a leader than more of a manager. And that might be what happened when you moved into that kind of more senior role, is that line kind of crossed over a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks for joining today, mate. And we'll do this again next week, and we'll come up with a different topic, I guess.
Well, I hope people out there want to tell us whether we added value for them. If they learned something, it was great, fantastic. There'll be some more. So, yeah, great to spend the time.